Hello everyone, welcome back to a brand new video. I'm Dagget, this is Dagget Designs, and in today's video we're going to be doing a little exercise on drawing finger waves. Now before we get into today's video, I need to thank the sponsor. Today's video is proudly sponsored by Clocks and Colors. Clocks and Colors is a handcrafted jewelry company over in Canada, and they produce handcrafted silver jewelry. For example, the Shield, which is a collaboration they did with Peter McKinnon. This is a really beautiful, really detailed piece of jewelry with blue pewtersite stone, and it's just really heavy and rugged. You can feel the quality of these. This is going to last a lifetime. This thing's really solid and it's really beautiful. Now I do have a giveaway for you guys today. Down in the description, I'm going to leave a link for Clocks and Colors. You can go ahead and click on that link and enter your email address. You will get a $40 off voucher on your next purchase with Clocks and Colors. Not only this, but you'll be entered into the running to win a $500 voucher for Clocks and Colors so that you can pick up some of this handcrafted jewelry yourself. So go ahead and click that link in the description down below and get yourself some really cool jewelry from Clocks and Colors. So I wanted to talk a little bit about doing finger waves and show you guys a little exercise that I use to sort of improve my finger waves and the sort of structure of them, because there's many different finger wave patterns that you can do, but not necessarily just the finger waves, but water backgrounds overall. So I'll show you guys this nice little koi fish illustration that I recently finished. This is using the same technique that I'm going to show you to construct your finger waves, as well as some of these crossover waves. These are really important. I find they help with the interaction with the background and the foreground subject matter, but not only this, but they help sort of tie the background in with the foreground. So we are going to be looking at doing something similar with this peony. I chose a peony because it's a nice simple subject matter, something pretty easy for you guys to hopefully follow along with. And yeah, let's get straight into it. So to start off with, whenever I've got a subject matter like a peony or a koi fish, I like to imagine that there's waves that are going to be hitting my subject matter and then crashing back over themselves. So I'm going to start in this bottom area here, and I'm going to create a curve like so. Okay, and that's going to curve up and around like a circle. And when I get to about here, I'm going to curve it back like so. So that creates this real definite curve around like so. So now you can imagine the water comes up, hits the peony or hits the rock that the peony is growing off, and it crashes back over itself. Now I'll double up on my line there with this little extra curve. I might come out again and back around. And now I've got a couple of options here, but what I'm going to do is follow my bottom line around through this first wave and loop around that one as well. So now you create another layer of water there. Now what I mean by layers of water, obviously water is not a rigid thing. However, when we draw it, it needs to have some sort of rigidity because we are using line work and shading to create our water here. So I'm actually creating layers of waves here by doing that. Now what I can do is throw in another couple of curves like so, which are basically these long C shapes. Okay, that's going to give you your fingers on your finger waves there. That's why they call them finger waves, because they sort of look like little fingers. However, it's just meant to be the white water that's sort of crashing at the top of a wave. And I like to add these little loops in wherever I can, sort of, to add in that little layer of depth. Now, I like to make sure that I've got these flowy streams of water as well. I think they look really nice, and it's kind of like these little streams of water or mini waterfalls crashing off rocks and sort of falling over the top of your subject matter. I'm going to do one here that goes behind, and maybe one on the other side that goes over the top. So I'm just going to come from the side of the page here and drop down like so. Now I'm going to come out from behind. I'm going to step down slightly and come out from behind that and drop down. Like so. And maybe one more just behind that. So it's going to create like this mini waterfall or mini water stream effect at the edge there. And that's going to go behind the subject matter in this case. And we're going to do some more waves crashing out in this area. On the other side, I want to have some of these streams of water maybe just overlapping a leaf. So I'm going to come down again like so. And I think I want to bring this one through on a little bit more of an angle. like so. Okay. And I can bring the second one across like so as well. So now I've got a couple that are overlapping. Now all you're going to do is go in and erase the first part of your leaf and the second part of your leaf. Basically so your line starts into the wave like so. And that will just be the tip part of the leaf there. Okay, so you're gonna have these little missing spots through here and through here. And that's gonna help create that effect that the leaf is actually behind the water. Now, looking at the waves for this top section, you don't want all your waves crashing off in the same direction. However, as you can see, I've drawn the petals of my peony facing off to the left. So majority of our waves are likely to be crashing in that sort of same direction. So we're gonna come out again with a little C shape, like so. Can add another curve to it. Now, one thing I like to do occasionally is throw in these little circular bits, these little ball sort of shapes. That's going to create another variation of my wave. And then you can come out from behind that and loop around like so. And that's going to create another little variation on your wave there. So that could be the waves that are sort of crashing off on that side of the page. And maybe we'll have a couple going off in this direction. Just using that same method, drawing in my little C shapes. Now it can help a little bit to layer your waves sometimes. So this is looking a little bit flat. Maybe I want to layer up one side. So I might come up halfway up the wave. Drop in a couple of fingers like so. And cut back again. And so now I've layered up this wave in front of this wave. That's just going to give me a little bit of a depth and variation on my waves there. Now I'm just going through and lining my design here. I like to use a brush pen. This is a Funosuke brush pen. I like to use that because it gives me some line variance, which when I'm doing Japanese work, I really like that little bit of line variance, but you can use whatever fine liners you're comfortable with or whatever lining tool you are comfortable with for doing your line work. And I'm just tracing it through to some tracing paper. I actually do most of my colored pencil illustration on tracing paper. I like the way that it comes out, and I really like the way you can get this layered effect when displaying your work. That's actually an idea that I got from Chris O'Donnell, who's a fantastic New York City based tattoo artist. He's an incredible artist. He's really, really good at Japanese style illustration and tattooing. And yeah, he does a lot of his colored pencil stuff on tracing paper. And I really love the way it looks when it's all displayed, because you can sort of layer your pictures on top of each other. And it just has a really nice effect. So I'm just going through and lining everything with a brush pen, and I'll get back to you when we start to line the waves. Now, when it gets to any part where your design is going to be crossed over by your background elements, I find it's important to draw your background element in first. So in this case, it's these two streams of water that are coming over our leaf. And I'm using a 0.5 size fine liner for this. Okay. I like to do my backgrounds, or parts of my backgrounds, especially these flowy stream bits. I tend to do those a little bit thinner than the subject matter, and that again, it creates some sort of contrast and helps to differentiate the two. Now, in terms of doing your line work for your main leaf now, you're gonna bring the first section all the way up to the line that you just drew. So everything behind that line comes straight up to it. Then you're gonna leave a gap, which is that little gap of pencil that we did. And you're going to draw everything in after that gap, all the way to the next line, like so. And then you're going to leave another gap after that line, and just draw the very end of your leaf in, like so. So you're going to leave these gaps, and you're going to see how that looks once we get rid of the sketch. Now, when doing my finger waves in particular, I like a little bit more consistency. So I'm going to come in with a 1.2 size. And I like to start from the tip of each finger and work backwards. Now you might find a different method works better for you. I don't know why I like doing it this way. I don't think there's any particular reason you should do it this way, but I find it most comfortable to work from the tip backwards. All right, now looking at shading our background, I'm just going to be using a Prismacolor pencil for this. Works really nicely on the tracing paper, and I've also got a sharpener because I like to keep a fairly fine point on my pencil. Now, I want you to keep in mind that no matter what medium you're doing this in, whether it's colored pencil, whether it's just sketching lead, or if you're doing this with inks or paints like we've done in the past, I just want to mention that the technique is going to differ, obviously. Using different mediums, there's going to be different techniques. However, the principles are going to remain the same. So feel free to sort of watch this and then experiment with whatever medium you'd like, or follow along with colored pencils. So I'm going to start off by talking about the inside of open-end waves like this. What do I mean by open-end? Well, these fingers overlap another element. These fingers don't. They just go off, and then there's white page behind them, open space behind them. So I want to talk first about how we do those. And what I like to do for these areas is a really light shade that just starts off a little bit darker on the inside, okay? So closest to the inside, a little bit darker, and then gets a little bit lighter on the outside like that. I don't like to do a really heavy shadow under them because it is an open space. The closer they get to another element, so for example, our flowy waves over the side here, this one's going to be a little bit darker. And the more recessed they are on the page, so how do I explain that? Basically, this finger is pushed more back into the body of the wave than these two. These two are a little bit further out. And so I'm going to do an even lighter area underneath these two because they're just not as shadowed. They're not going to create as much of a shadow, especially this top one. That's going to be really, really light. Now, as for these little recurve sections, again, I'm going to start in the darkest area, which is going to be the base, nearest the body of the wave, and then come up into my lighter sort of shadows. And this is really just to fill out the background a little bit. A lot of the time with these tattoo designs, you just need to create a little bit of shadowing behind the subject matter so it doesn't look so flat against the skin or against the page. So just creating a little bit of shadowing. Now with colored pencils, I like to either do cross hatching or just really light line shadows, okay? Now for the body section of each wave, I like to keep it nice and simple. So to start off with, I like to come down to where my subject matter is and put in a pretty harsh shadow. And as I come up into the wave, I get a bit lighter. And I can bring a little bit of shadowing out into the finger, but I don't like to bring it all the way through. I like to keep most of it just plain. And then you can sort of add in, again, a little bit of shading that comes up into the next sort of section, nice and light. And a little bit of a heavier shadow towards the main subject matter so that it separates it nicely from the wave. I like to keep my waves a bit lighter. I think it helps to add a nicer contrast to it. But with that, you need to add a heavier shadow near or around your main subject matter to sort of help push it out. Now we've got a wave that overlaps another wave here. That's going to create a bit of a shadow behind it. So a little bit darker first. And then that will get a little bit lighter as it goes through to the next finger of the wave there. Okay, but it's sitting behind another section of wave, so it is going to be a little bit darker. Now, coming out from behind this sort of ball section or this bulge section, I'm going to come up and around and get nice and light up into that finger, like so. And a bit darker into this section. So creating these little pockets or little recesses in the wave there by adding in these shadows. And that's going to give it that sort of three-dimensional wave look where there's shadows and, you know, portions of the wave sit over the top of other areas of the wave. That's what's going to give it that really nice layered look. Okay, now a quick word about these little loops before we jump into our flowy waves here. What I like to do for these is very similar to our open-end waves. I like to sort of start, I'll start with a base shadow like this, and I like to make sure it gets really light towards the next line, even just pulling through to a white, okay, like so. So just leaving that sort of streak of white along the line there, okay. And then I'll come in close to my first line and start making that shadow a bit darker, okay, like so. And then I'll come even closer in and make it a little bit darker, like this. And then closer in and make it darker again. Okay, pretty much until we've got black up against the line, and then that's coming out to a nice gradient towards our open end there. Now with colored pencils, it can take a little bit of work to get it smooth, but it's just layering, and I like to use a combination of cross-hatching and just regular shading technique. That sort of makes it easier to achieve my gradient if I cross-hatch. Also gives it a particular aesthetic. It gives it that, you know, pencil cross-hatching illustration look, which I really like. And so that's essentially how I like to do these sections. I like to keep them nice and dark. And I like to have them, you know, nice and dark and like they're underneath, because these waves are crashing over the top of themselves. The part underneath them is going to be sort of the darker part of the water, and above it is where the waves are crashing. So doing your sections underneath these rings in that method. Now, as you can see, once you've added in those layers of nice, dark, rich black areas, and I've done a little bit behind this area of flowy waves, underneath our peony and in the background here, it adds a really nice level of contrast. And that's why I say keep the finger areas of your waves a little bit lighter, because these underneath parts and the shadowed areas are really going to make them stand out. Now, looking at doing our little flowy waves over the top of our leaf here, I'm going to turn the page around. The first one actually goes behind our peony here. So I'm just going to come in with a fairly light shadow. And I'm going to leave the edge of it completely white, okay? This is a pretty common thing with Japanese tattoo designs and traditional style tattoo designs. It's like leaving these breaks. They call them skin breaks. When doing them on paper, you just, I guess, call negative spacing. But just leaving this little bit negative space along the edge of a line there. So our first one's going to be fairly light. It's going to have a little bit of depth to it. I'm going to start it off a little bit darker, and it'll have somewhat of a medium tone to it, I suppose. Okay, like so. Now for the next one, what I'm going to do, we're going to go behind our leaf, but we are going to leave that edge completely white, okay? So coming down like so, and I'm doing this fairly lightly to begin with. That way I can sort of adjust the contrast as needed. And again, bringing it up to that white line, but leaving a gap. And if you've done your line work correctly, this should be pretty easy to get off the bat. Okay, so we'll come up like that. And I like to sort of loosen my stroke a little bit towards the end when I'm doing pencil. Again, just gives it that sketched look, but it also opens it up and makes it a little bit lighter. And now if you'd like to, you can come in and add a little bit more sort of contrast to it. If you're gonna add any darkness, I would do it off the next line, because this side's white. So you want your lightest shade to sort of come up and touch that white area there, and the darker shade to come off the other line and underneath the leaf of the peony there. Okay. And so that's going to have this really nice overlapped look where you can still see the leaf through it because water is transparent. However, the wave is crashing over the top of the leaf, and there is this, I guess, refraction of light, or there is this glare on the water, and you can't completely see it. It's kind of like in real life if you submerged a leaf under a flowing stream. You know, you're going to see parts of it, but maybe there's going to be sections that are slightly obscured by the way that the light hits the water. That's sort of what we're trying to imitate, I suppose. It's the best word for it. And I'm going to do the same thing for this end section. Of course, we don't have a line to work off, so you just have to imagine a line and work fairly lightly, adding a little bit more depth where you feel it's necessary. but in this case, keeping it pretty light. I also like to make sure that these rushing, I like to call them flowing or rushing waves. I like to keep them a lot lighter than my main background. Again, that's going to help with a little bit with the separation. So these areas are your darkest. Your finger waves are sort of the next, the medium sort of tone, and these these flowing or running waves, I just like to keep them nice and light. That way those white streaks really stand out. Now I am quickly just coming in and doing my color here for the sake of completion. I thought I'd quickly show you guys how to do that with your crossover sections here. And I wanted to point out that you can have as many of these little crossover background elements as you'd like. I just did one here for an example. Now I'm going to come in and start coloring my leaf on the open side of this, like so, and just stop where the line is. And you may as well color this whole first section of the leaf in that way, right up to the line. Like so. Now what I'm going to do is color back towards the line, but I'm going to leave an open end on it, and I'm going to try and fade my green into the white just a little bit towards the edge, giving it sort of a fuzzy or blurred edge. That's going to help that sort of transparent water look even more and give it that sort of effect. Okay, so I like to just whip the pencil in towards the white very slightly, and not have it as saturated, so don't push as hard. And that's going to help make it look a little bit blurry, a little bit fuzzy, and a little bit more like it's sitting behind a transparent stream of water, all right? Okay guys, that is it for today's video. I really hope you enjoyed this one. I hope you give it a go. It's not really a tutorial, but more an exercise that you guys can follow along to get better at drawing your Japanese wave backgrounds and finger waves. I thought I'd color the peony for completion's sake. Anyways, I really hope you like this piece, and don't forget to go down into the description and click the link for clocks and colors so that you can get some awesome handcrafted sterling silver jewelry, and I'll see you guys next time. Alright, bye-bye. If you like the content that I make and you'd like to support the channel, make sure you smash that like button. And hey, while you're at it, check out one of these other great videos.